What would you do if the one person meant to educate you became your daily tormentor? And the system designed to protect you simply shrugged? In today's story, the protagonist's choice is a masterclass in how to handle it. It all started with a grudge that had nothing to do with me. My history teacher. Let's call him Mr. Peterson. Knew my dad. See, my dad is a lawyer. And years before I was ever in that high school, he had represented Mr. Peterson's ex-wife during their incredibly bitter divorce. Apparently, my dad took him to the cleaners in the settlement. And for some reason, Mr. Peterson decided to take all that pent-up frustration out on me. Mr. Peterson believed he held all the power in that classroom, completely unaware that his daily cruelty was forging the very weapon that would bring his career to an end. The abuse was constant and always public. If I dared to raise my hand, he'd roll his eyes dramatically before calling on me. Then, he'd announce to the entire class, "Listen to what Leo says. That way you will know what the wrong answers are." He relentlessly criticized my work, once telling me I'd never amount to much because I obviously have a learning disability. I don't. For the record, he was just being a prick. I knew history wasn't my strongest subject, but his treatment was completely uncalled for. He even started marking my papers down for penmanship. Something I later learned from classmates was a standard applied only to me. Soon, a knot of anxiety would tighten in my stomach every morning. I began to dread going to his class all day. It wasn't just in my head, either. My friends noticed, making casual comments like, "Yeah, Mr. Peterson really doesn't like you. What did you do to him, man?" My dad was furious that his son was being targeted for something he had nothing to do with. He made a fuss. We had meetings with the principal, and he tried to get me moved to a different history class. But the school district was over capacity. They told us they couldn't move me without displacing another student, which they didn't think would be fair to them. Apparently, letting this teacher bully me indefinitely was perfectly fair. This revealed the school administration's greatest flaw: a rigid adherence to policy over the well-being of a student. An institutional powerlessness that ultimately forced me to seek my own, far more permanent solution. The turning point came one evening after our useless meeting with the principal. I overheard my dad, venting in an angry whisper to my mom, say he didn't like that I was in that fucking pedophiles class. To this day, I have no clue why my dad called him that. Maybe his ex-wife had told my dad something during the divorce case. But the venom in my dad's tone was enough. An idea was planted in my head, and it began to grow. My plan took shape. I gathered a bunch of social media pictures of a girl I knew of from another school across town. She was underage, and I had met her at a few parties. For obvious reasons, I changed her name. Let's call her Jessica. I chose her because she had a lot of mirror selfies on her social media, which I needed to make the profile feel authentic to a guy like Mr. Peterson. I created profiles for Jessica on Kik and WhatsApp, linking them to a Google Voice number from our city. Getting his cell number was surprisingly easy. A classmate on the football team gave it to me. Mr. Peterson was an assistant coach, and most of the team had his number from a summer retreat. My heart hammered in my chest as I sent the first text. I kept it simple, telling him I was Jessica, that I'd seen him at a football game between our schools earlier that year, and I thought he was cute. He was cautious at first, feeling out the situation. But after I sent the first of her selfies, it was obvious he was hooked. I played hard to get, only sending a new selfie when he really begged for it. And the more he begged, the flirtier I became. We never sexted. I was 17 and barely knew what to say anyway. The vibe I went for was awkwardly forward. To build credibility, I created a backstory. I told him Jessica didn't have social media because she was into older guys. And they don't want anyone to know. So I don't have social media to make them more comfortable. In hindsight, a 17-year-old girl with no social media presence should have been a massive red flag. But maybe that's on him too. After texting for a while on the Google Voice number, I told him my mom read my texts. I didn't even have to finish the thought. He immediately suggested we move our conversation to WhatsApp and encouraged me to delete our text history. This reveals Mr. Peterson's greatest fatal flaw, his arrogance. He was so confident in his pursuit that he failed to see the trap being laid, even helping to build it himself. The conversations continued. I specifically told him, as Jessica, that she was 17 years old. 3 days later, he sent the first unsolicited picture of his junk. It caught me completely off guard. I never asked for it. But he arrived at that decision all on his own. Many more followed. To make it more believable when he pushed for nudes in return, I found 2 to 3 anonymous pictures from a Gone Wild subreddit, posted by a user with a similar slender, blonde body type who didn't show her face. I now had everything I needed. One commenter on my story later put it perfectly: he did it to himself. If you're in that position, you know damn well you can't send dick pics to a 17-year-old. Even though the age of consent in our state was 16. The school wouldn't care about the legal line. The professional and moral line had been obliterated. With a mix of cold determination and trembling hands, I composed an email. I attached all of it, the WhatsApp chat logs showing Jessica stating her age, and every single explicit picture he had sent. I then sent it to the principal, the school district's main office, and every single email address I could scrape from the district website and its social media pages. The moment I hit send, a wave of relief and terror washed over me. I had crossed a line. But as another commenter would later write, it sounds like you didn't so much set him up as give him an opportunity to destroy himself. If he wasn't a pedophile, he wouldn't have fallen for the bait. The fallout was swift and silent. Within 3 days, we walked into history class to find a substitute teacher at the front of the room. The official story was that Mr. Peterson had to take some time off for personal issues. That was it. The rumor mill went wild, with whispers of him being a pedophile spreading like wildfire. But nobody knew I had anything to do with it. I imagine the school tracked down the real girl whose pictures I used, and she obviously would have had no idea who he was. But the chat logs were undeniable proof. That was likely enough to get him fired and have his teaching certification revoked. I graduated about 3 months later and never saw or heard from him again. 6 months after this all happened, I joined the military and left that city for good. The only update I ever got was years later, from a friend who still lives there. He told me he saw Mr. Peterson working the deli counter at a local grocery store, not far from our old high school. I never told a single soul it was me. I don't regret it. I was a bitter, moody teenager, pushed into a corner. My only goal was to get him out of my life, not necessarily to get him in legal trouble. This story serves as a stark reminder of a difficult truth: When you're being bullied by someone who holds authority over you. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do to survive. I took matters into my own hands only after the system failed to protect me. So I'll ask you, what would you have done in my shoes?